So firstly, if you've just clicked on this, welcome to the Legal Brew. Now, if you're wondering what the Legal Brew is all about, well, let me tell you. We interview insightful people in legal, industry figures. We offer career advice, and it's all intended with the purpose of helping you to advance in your career and also just give you some interesting content about what's happening and what's hot in legal. So I'm Jason Connolly. I'm the CEO of JMC Legal Recruitment. I've been a recruiter for, well, how long have I been a recruiter for now? You know, when you've been a recruiter a long time, when you stop remembering the amount of years, but
Mm.
coming on 13 years now. I've recruited in London a long time. And today we're going to be talking all about a really interesting subject, which is the top five reasons why you might want to move in-house. Now, we've got the perfect person to talk all about that. We got our very own Sam Thompson, who heads up our in-house division. Sam, tell us a bit about you for people who don't know who you are, what you do, and yeah, just give us a bit of insight into you.
Yeah, been doing in-house legal recruitment for just over 3 years now. Been at JMC for nearly 2 years. Yeah, just focus on everything to do with in-house. We work with a lot of businesses across uh, a lot of different businesses across a range of sectors, the energy sector, tech and software, quite a lot on the real estate side of things as well. We also get some really interesting clients on board from kind of the media sector, the sports sector, and things that are a little bit more niche as well. So anything and everything we can turn our hand to. So yeah,
Good.
that's me.
Well, there we go. Well, so we get, honestly, so many calls. And I think Sam is probably the most popular person in the business because the phone is just constantly ringing with people wanting to either go in-house, talk about in-house, or just explore the very subject. So that's kind of why we're making this video today, to sort of address why are so many people driven to want to go in-house? Well, we're going to give you some pretty good reasons on why you might want to go in-house. But I think I think to say from the get-go, and you can give me your opinion on this in a moment, Sam, but I think in the world of being a fee earner, you've got pressure from clients, you've got billable hours targets, and a lot of people are just thinking, do you know what? I want to actually get under the bonnet of one business and actually be working more on projects rather than constantly looking at your 6 or 7 minute units and living your life by that way. So it's understandable why a lot of people want to move. What would you say? Sort of, you get people contacting you every single day in abundance, wanting to explore legal counsel roles. Some very ambitious people wanted to go straight in as a general counsel. But why? What do you think are the main reasons why people want to make that move? What are people telling you at the moment?
Yeah, there's always a lot of reasons why people want to move in-house. I think a lot of people in private practice are yeah, they maybe get to the kind of 4 or 5 PQE mark, and I think, right, I've obviously trained in a law firm. I've been grafting my socks off in a law firm for the last 4 or 5 years, and they just want to shake things up a little bit, get away from the kind of billing mentality, and just see what's on the other side. I think one of the key things is one of the key things is probably career progression away from that partner route. So obviously, if people are coming in 5, 6 PQE, looking at a legal counsel position, it doesn't end there. Obviously, they can go up the ranks to senior legal counsel, associate general counsel, head of legal, general counsel. That's the kind of typical route that they will look at. But I think when people are kind of pushing 15, 16 PQE, if they have maybe been in a GC or a head of legal position for a few years, and they may look at different avenues. So if they want a position on the board, they can look at chief legal officer positions. They can look at other board positions, CEO roles, if they're particularly entrepreneurial. Also, there's a lot of kind of legal operations, commercial manager focused positions as well. So yeah, it's not just the typical legal counsel to general counsel route. There are other avenues that they can explore as well, which is obviously quite different from just going, just being in a law firm and aiming for that partnership position.
Well, I
So
think you make an interesting point there because I'm not saying that the only route to progression in a law firm is that of a partner because, you might go on to do an operation role or a board role or whatever. But I do think there's a lot more scope for variety by going in-house. And I think even that in itself, the variety is why a lot of people want to go in-house. They want to be broadening their skill set out and taking all of that valuable experience that they've learned throughout their career and actually applying it to, advising or maybe risk deals. I can see the attraction in it. And I guess this dovetails really nicely into what this Legal Brew episode is all about, which is the top. We have gone through, Sam and I, the list of what we think are the top 5 reasons why you might want to go in-house. And there's a lot of reasons, but we've narrowed it down to 5. I will say from the get-go, this is just our opinion. So we're not seeking agreement, but we're going to say it. And I think we're both very qualified to talk about this, both having been around the block or ridden the rodeo many, many times. So, Sam, without further ado, and I must say, number 1, we're not saying is the top reason. We are ranking all of these equal to one another, but we have to start somewhere. So, Sam, you mentioned it. Number 1, career progression.
yeah, I think I just
You did just say a
I
lot
got
about it.
ahead of myself there and just said everything about the career progression point. But yeah, that is obviously quite an important one to a lot of people. Obviously, a lot of lawyers are incredibly ambitious and rightly so. So yeah, I think we've
We have
more or less
covered that
covered
one.
that first one already. But I think
I think
another
I was
go
going
on
to say
after you.
on the flip side, on this point about career progression, I think that uh, whilst it is a massive positive because, like you rightly said, you can go off in a lot of different directions. And you touched on an interesting point, which is you mentioned, even CEO positions and top level board positions, which are outside of legal and general counsel. And I think a lot of people who are maybe new to the in-house world, lawyers are a really good pair of hands to have in a law firm because when you are on a board of directors, having a lawyer who is managing risk, who looks at things very much from a risk perspective, and also if you've got that flair of entrepreneurialness about you, I can really see why someone who's been a lawyer can rise to those positions in a business. What I'd also say on the flip side, though, and I know we're talking about the top 5 positive reasons to move in-house, but something to worth considering is sometimes, yes, there's a lot of opportunity and yes, there's a lot of progression within house, but what you can sometimes find is you can hit a bit of a glass ceiling in house because people don't tend to move on too much. So you
Yeah.
can be waiting to fill, well, I don't want to say a dead man's shoes, but you could be waiting for someone to either move up or retire or growth. Anything else you want to say on this number 1
Gotcha.
point?
Yeah, just I think with the career progression side of things, I know obviously I mentioned the kind of C-suite level positions, but I'd say they're more suited to people who have been in-house for a while because it's being in-house allows you to gain that wider business knowledge. You're typically working with finance, you're typically working with sales. Obviously, depending on the nature of the business, you may be working with the HR team, you may be working with the compliance team. So getting that kind of well-rounded experience will kind of allow you to just improve your general commerciality and business understanding. Which is maybe a bit harder to do it if obviously you've been working in a law firm for kind of 12, 13 years. You're kind of pigeonholed. You can be pigeonholed, but in-house will really allow you to just widen that skill set a little bit to maybe push you into one of those more senior positions.
Well, if you're a corporate lawyer doing corporate law and advising on, agreements every day, commercial contracts, you're dealing with M&A. If you're going to go in-house to an in-house environment, it's very unlikely, unless you go into some kind of private equity business where they're making acquisitions, that you're going to be dealing with that every single day. And I think one of the common things that I always hear from in-house lawyers, and I have done for a very long time, and I think the interesting thing about this, and I will say this to people watching this, I have done in-house recruitment, but I am private practice through and through. That's what I've done the majority of my career. And what I do say is, someone who's gone in-house, sometimes their skill set is so broad, which is wonderful. You know, their skill set is so broad. It can, people can also lose their specialism, and become a bit of out of touch sometimes, when they go back, or if they want to go back to private practice. So I guess for that reason, a lot of people, when they look at in-house, this is a career move for them.
Yeah.
That they've done their time in private practice. They're hanging up their boots there, and they're looking at life, well,
Yeah.
in-house.
Yeah. And that probably leads us on nicely to the second point, which is pursuing your passion. I think that's quite an important one. Obviously, if you've been through the trenches of a law firm for kind of 7-8 years, you're going to have to work with typically different clients in different sectors, but in going in-house will really allow you to join a business that aligns with your interests. So that's another pretty exciting positive for a lot of these lawyers who are considering a move in-house. Say, for example, you're a bit more of a tech head. You can join a exciting software startup, and obviously with everything happening in AI at the moment, there's a lot of growth in that sector as well. There's a lot of new laws, new regulations that are popping up all over the place. So that's another quite yeah, I'd say it's another key positive for
I think the
moving
whole
in-house as
world
well.
is moving more in a direction now where we want to be, especially with younger people. And I know I keep going off on a bit of a tangent here, but I think we are, as a society now, wanting to follow passions, work for an employer that aligns with one's values. And I think a lot of people, pursuing your passion is a big one. And I think a lot of people go into the legal industry with kind of one, maybe kind of view of it. And over time, a lot of lawyers can become jaded and think, do you know what? Look, I want to get away from the targets, the business development, the bringing fees through the door, constantly being at the beck and call. And I actually want to go and have a purpose. I actually want to, work on something long term, be part of a big project. And, I think there's a lot to be said for that. And, I can see why so many lawyers want to make that move. And I think that's definitely, I can see why that's in the top five. Absolutely. Especially based on the data that we get from speaking to candidates every single day about what's your reason for looking to leave, what are you looking for, what's your driver, and all of those things. And
Yeah.
you spot trends in this job, don't you? You do. You speak to people every day, and you kind of can get a good sense of, in general terms, how people are feeling. What's people's anxieties? What are they going through? What's the feel in the market? How much confidence do we have as a country? We'd probably be a good place to start with polling, wouldn't we? Because you do get a level of insight about what the general consensus is, don't you?
You do, and I think talking of market trends, I think one thing that I've noticed quite a lot in the last year and a half or so. I think I mentioned earlier that we've got quite a few clients in the energy sector. More of them are on the renewable energy side of things, and the amount of interest that we get from the kind of traditional in-house energy lawyers who've been focused on the oil and gas side of things, who are wanting to align themselves with the renewable energy businesses because of obviously the climate at the moment,
Moral and
climate
ethical
change.
reasons and
Yeah,
values.
like we placed a general counsel recently who's worked in traditional energy for 10 years, and he was really keen to make that shift to the renewable side of things, and to head up a project that can ultimately have a really positive effect on the globe and on humankind. Essentially, that they focus on quite a niche area of renewable energy that's looking quite promising for the energy transition. So, yeah, he's obviously he's very knowledgeable on the traditional energy side of things. will take him a while to get up to speed with the renewable stuff, but that's just an example of you know, being able to follow your passion a little bit more. Even once you've already been in-house for 8 or 9 years, you can still make little changes here and there to where you're working, and yeah, it's
I think on that point
yeah,
as
he'll do a good
well,
job.
I have no doubt making the switch to green. I do think a lot of what was I going to say now? I've totally lost my trail of thought on that point. Let's go on to number three. I had something. It's on the tip of my tongue. It will come back to me in a moment. So what's the number three then?
Number three, I think we touched on this before, but I think there's a couple points that are worth mentioning as well. So it's that general commercial and business understanding, being commercially savvy or whatever you want to call it. You know, working in an in-house team. Obviously, you're going to be part of a legal team, but at the same time, you're going to be liaising with the finance department, the sales department, adding value in different ways than you would in private practice. Because obviously, in private practice, it's pretty black and white. You're obviously billing. You have your billing targets. You have to bring in a certain amount of money, and in-house lawyers have to kind of demonstrate their value across the whole of the business, not just within the legal team. So just becoming in-house lawyers are they
Well, if
become
even if you
not
look at
just
the way they're
lawyers, but
appraised, it's very different. You know, there's I guess money is obviously going to come into it in one aspect or another, because you know they've got to pay for themselves, but it's definitely not as black and white as you know the big focus for a fee earner. Funnily enough, is the fees.
yeah, that's true. But yeah, just kind of developing that commercial and business understanding is very. They're in-house lawyers, but they're also business consultants at the same time. So just yeah, we touched on it earlier. Just becoming a more well-rounded business professional, I think, is a really valuable skill to have. Not just for the in-house legal team, but just for your own professional development, for your own yeah, just makes you a bit more well-rounded, really.
It does, yeah. It definitely adds a big string to your bow, and you know most of these legal counsel and you know not just legal counsel roles but these in-house roles, they're working at top level in terms of strategy, in terms of driving business, in terms of driving growth, managing risk. Very, very, very different. Now, number four, I this is a massive one, especially post pandemic. We're in a world now that's very different, Sam, I can assure you, to when I started in recruitment. If you'd have mentioned flexibility back 13 years ago, that would be the door slam shut in your face. But, you know, without further ado, number four is working hours and flexibility. What's going on then in-house with working hours and flexibility? What's the world looking like at the moment in your department?
Yeah, well, obviously the majority of our clients in-house are UK based. We do have we've got a few FTSE 100 businesses internationally that we're working with at the moment. But if I'm just talking in a UK sense, things are, I don't want to say going back to normal, but a lot of businesses are encouraging people to be in the office a bit more. That's not to say that they have to be in 5 days a week, but I think quite a few of our real estate clients and clients in the financial services sector are wanting people to be in minimum 4 days, some 5 days. But there may be the more old school clients. But if you kind of flip it on its head, have a look at these kind of slightly more modern and progressive tech, software, media and advertising, scale ups and SMEs, they'll often have a bit more of a kind of, yeah, just a bit of a more progressive attitude to working arrangements. So a lot of those guys are only asking people to come in maybe 2 or 3 days a week. It's pretty hard from what I've found, maybe in the last kind of about the last year, to find a role that is completely remote. It's yeah, it's they're very few and far between at the moment, and they'll often they won't necessarily have to come to a recruiter as much because it's just the means of putting an advert out fully remote, and then they'll get 100 applicants. So those remote roles often, yeah, that they don't. They normally won't have to come to legal recruiters as
But
much
you
because
think compared to private practice, you think that a top positive is the fact that more flexibility exists in house and private practice?
I think it's more structured. I think it's definitely more structured. Working hours will be less. Maybe less so for if you're working at if you're going in house at a big four bank or maybe a private equity backed real estate investment company. They will still be working some pretty serious hours. So you've got to take it on a case by case basis, really. But yeah, if you're looking for shorter working days and good flexibility, I'd say stay away from those top four banks if you can
Well,
help it.
noted, noted. Fantastic. And I think that, you know, I think it goes, I don't want to keep bleating on about billable hours, but I think that, when you divide some of these billable hours targets by working days in the year, that's 8 hours a day, sometimes 8, 9 hours a day. And you think, well, hang on a minute, where's lunch coming from? Where's the time to boot on the computer in the morning? And you can
Yeah.
understand why, especially at some of these big city firms, why people have said, you know what, I've played this, I've worked in this industry, I've played this game now for 6, 7 years. I can't keep going on. I want to have more variety to my work. I actually want to see my children grow up. And you can understand why people fall out of love with it and it starts grating. I remember doing that commute every single day for 4 years into the city years ago. And it especially in winter, it did really. Didn't get home till about 8:30, 8:45. Make me lunch, back to bed again, back up the next day. And I can understand why a lot of people, obviously, a lot of people now really live out, in the suburbs as well with the price of houses. So some of these commutes are not
Course.
short. Well, lastly, I think that we touched on it already, but let's round off on this. Number 5, go ahead.
Yeah, just I think just that more diverse legal
Variety.
practice. Yeah, the variety of workload and that keeps things exciting. It allows you to kind of enhance your skill set because typically in-house lawyers will be working on commercial contracts, and they'll also be having a look at compliance, a little bit of data protection. They also may have a look at the kind of HR and employment contracts as well. So you're not just even say, for example, you have been part of a commercial team in
Mhm.
private practice where the focus has been on commercial contracts and things surrounding that. Once you go in house, you'll be having a look at you'll be focusing on a much broader workload, and some of the stuff you may have touched on, some of the stuff you may have not touched on before, but yeah, I think becoming I think yeah, that does lead to what we mentioned about becoming a more well-rounded lawyer. Say for example, you're part of a commercial team in private practice, and you follow your passion into technology, then you'll get more time to focus on the general business contracts, but also the technology contracts, the software contracts. So yeah, it allows you to take on that broader workload. It's definitely not a walk in the park, but I think if you are joining a team of 3 or 4, 5 in-house lawyers, you'll be able to pick up a lot of these things that you may be a little bit lighter on. Coming from private practice, you'll be able to learn from other people who've embedded themselves in that business, and yeah, it's I'd say that's a pretty decent positive as well.
I think it's worth saying as well. I think you make some really interesting points there. I think that with the diversity and the broadness of the roles in house, a lot of the time when these companies are recruiting for these roles, very rarely, unless a candidate has done a very similar role in exactly, a very similar company, candidates aren't going to have every single bit of experience that the client is looking for because you're either a corporate lawyer or you're a banking lawyer. So you're not going to have the broadness of the role. So on that very point, we're going to do another video, which is you know, top hacks, top ways to actually get into an in-house role. Because it's all well and good me and Sam talking about all the wonderful positives of how to go in-house, but there's definitely some things that I think, you know, if that is an aspiration of yours, especially as a younger lawyer, you might be 1, 2, 3 years PQE thinking, I want to go in-house. I want to be a general counsel. I want to be working at, you know, top level strategy. How do I do it and how do I stand out? Because there is a lot of competition for these roles, a hell of a lot.
Yeah, there is a serious amount, but yeah, we can go through those points on the next call. We don't want to
Oh,
give away all the
no, we
secrets straight
don't. We
away.
don't. We will. And I've got some really, really good points actually on what I think people can do. And I'm a big fan, as I'm sure you know, Sam, of having a career plan and actually planning ahead. If where you want to be in 5 years' time is an in-house, you know, legal counsel or whatever it might be, back plan, decide where you want to be, and then reverse engineer it. So we'll talk about that on a future video. But I hope this helps. Sam, thank you for coming on the Legal Brew again.
Thanks for having me.